Monday morning on TYT Sports, talking a little UFC 200. So, Shane Fazen joining me here. Thanks for joining us, Shane. So, where do we start, man? This card, we were talking a little bit off camera when it was first announced. I'm talking way back when we had Diaz and McGregor first announced, and then it slowly dwindled. We have Jones, Cormier, and then Jones just does what Jones does. Right. And we are left now with Cormier, Silva. And I watched the fight, every single fight I watched, and I tried to be as neutral as possible and take it for what it was and try not to let the fact that I was so ecstatic about Jones fighting kind of sway my vision and just take it for what it was. But overall, I was let down. And I think from what you were responding to on Twitter, we were on kind of the same page. So what was your overall thoughts on it first?
I mean, when you hype something up this big, and on paper it should have been a great card. You know, it had the best athletes in the world. But sometimes it becomes a stalemate when you have two guys going against each other because either they're hesitant or they cancel each other out. And that sort of is what happened. I mean, besides Jones doing what he does, getting busted, you know, Silva stepped up, and that was cool to see that. But on 2 days' notice, and true story, the day before that was announced, I saw him in Chipotle, so he wasn't on a strict diet or anything like that.
The dad bod was well and truly in fashion. Everyone was on Twitter saying dad bod Silva. But to be fair, like we've seen guys with not the best physique. Daniel Cormier is one of them. Mark Wright's one of them, but they know how to strike, and sometimes it's about technique. But I completely agree with that. So we're going to break down some of the fights individually. Stay tuned in an hour. We'll talk more about Edgar Aldo, which I think was one of the most impressive performances from Jose Aldo. So we'll get into that. My standout fight, right? So I was looking forward to seeing Silva, that kind of nostalgic feeling. I was looking, that same nostalgia carried through because I wanted to see Brock Lesnar back in the octagon. But Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes. So let's start with that. So I was talking to the guys in the room we were watching with. We had a little fight watching party, and I was saying that, like, don't be so let down. This fight is going to have some blood. It's going to have some striking, and it's going to have some tests for Miesha Tate, who performed so well against Holly Holm and was able to submit her. But Amanda Nunes is a different fighter. She's got great striking. I watched her previous fight. She's an animal in there. She uses a lot of her intelligent boxing style to wear down her opponent. And from the moment she stepped in, Miesha Tate looked hesitant. And I thought that Amanda Nunes just take it to her and had some great striking ability, which inevitably wore down Miesha Tate.
Yeah, I mean, two things popped up with this fight made me think is that rock, paper, scissors, you know, just because Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey doesn't mean that Miesha Tate's going to beat Holly Holm, doesn't mean that Nunes is going to lose to Miesha Tate. So, you know, styles make everything. But the other thing I realized, too, is Miesha Tate didn't look as hungry as normal. No. She seemed content that she was the champion for the time that she was, and she tapped out really soon. I really believe that. I mean, could you imagine if that was Rousey pulling on her arm? She wouldn't have tapped. She would have let that thing break, and she would have kept going until her arm got ripped off.
Yeah, I thought she looked, I think that's spot on. I didn't want to, like, I mean, let's be honest here. I am as real as I can possibly be when it comes to UFC, and a lot of people sometimes hate that I'll be a little bit too honest at times when it's their own star athletes that they value so much, like Jon Jones or whatever. But I honestly thought as soon as Miesha Tate stepped in, we see how focused she was against Holly Holm, and you see how hungry she was. And Holly Holm delivered some jabs at her that she just looked to brush off because she was so focused on it. But as soon as Nunes caught her and she started to bleed, she looked like she didn't want to be there anymore. She kept backing up, and Nunes obviously sensed blood and was able to go and take control. But this division now is so wide open that we just don't know who's in control. It keeps changing hands.
I mean, it would be really cool if it became the old school boxing with Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, and it was those four back and forth, and it was just wars. That would be great. I don't think that's going to happen. The way that Ronda Rousey speaks now, it sounds like she's got one more fight and then she's done. She's talking about how she wants to start a family, have babies, and stop fighting. And Miesha Tate didn't look very hungry in this fight. So
well, that division's open. The heavyweight division now has got the contender back in. So Brock Lesnar, the man mountain, like we were talking about it before, the surface size from that guy's chest up, like, it just doesn't look human. He looks like a turtle.
An action figure.
Yeah, he does look like an action figure. So what was your thoughts on that fight? Were you surprised by the way Brock took it to Mark Hunt? Because Mark Hunt, we know, is an incredible striker and has great boxing ability. But that looked to me that 9-inch difference in reach, just he couldn't get inside.
I mean, he implemented the strategy that he had planned that everyone knew he was going to do, including Mark Hunt, which was that overhand right and take him down, shoot in for that power shot. And he made it work. You know, there was a couple times that Mark Hunt stuffed it. He's actually has a really good sprawl, is good at stuffing takedowns. But when you got the guy that big, shaped that way, he gets you up against the cage, he's gonna take you down eventually. he's really good on top, even though Mark Hunt is good at tying up, and he still punches from the bottom. It wasn't enough for him to win the fight.
Yeah, I think we all kind of expected Brock Lesnar to continue on with his wrestling style. Like, the guy's a, what is it, 2-time NCAA champion?
Yeah.
Like, he's got unbelievable wrestling ability and able to take down someone like Mark Hunt. But I think the final point to touch on when it comes to as I mentioned, we will talk about Aldo Edgar, which I do really want to get into that discussion. But I have got a message, like I want to reiterate on the recap, to UFC fans attending. I just cannot believe that people were booing Daniel Cormier and then cheering Anderson Silva. Right? Anderson Silva's a legend. I understand. He's going to get that reception wherever he goes. But I waited a little bit because I was initially kind of pissed off when I did the recap, and I said to people, why are you booing Daniel Cormier? Like, the guy's been through a horrible last few days. He stepped up to fight someone that he didn't train to fight against. He put all of his thoughts and passion on fighting Jon Jones to try and right the wrongs. And people were booing him. And then the response was, yeah, but he fought a guy who came off the couch for 2 days and just pounded him to the ground and didn't do anything exciting. What are you talking about? Like, are you expecting Daniel Cormier to come out because he's fighting Anderson Silva, who's not in great shape, to just suddenly start throwing leg kicks and elbows and start trying to pound him into the ground? Daniel Cormier is going to fight the way Daniel Cormier fights. This is the same group that probably turned up to Mayweather Pacquiao and were booing because they never saw a knockout. You need to understand what you're watching and don't complain about the way people go and try and do what they can to win. That's what Daniel Cormier's objective was. Imagine he came in after being so distraught at losing against Jon Jones and came in and didn't prepare right against a fighter who took the fight in such short notice. You know what would have happened? The same thing that happened with McGregor against Diaz. He tried to adjust, but he didn't know how to fight this fighter after taking it in such short notice, so Nate Diaz was able to capitalize on that. Anderson Silva, do not be fooled by his age or the fact that he's not won since 2012. The guy's still known as one of the best ever, so if Cormier was to slip up and try to do things that he didn't like, he could have been caught out.
That's a really good point. I mean, most of the people look at it, you know, he's only had 2 days to prepare. You should be able to walk through this guy. But then, like you said, you're not prepared for this guy's style. Yeah. And Anderson Silva's style is the most unorthodox of anyone in there. You know, you can't try anything risky against someone like that. Yeah. He was throwing those double roundhouse kicks low high. How often do you see stuff like that? Yeah, could you imagine if Cormier was throwing, you know, something that he normally wouldn't, like a flying knee, and gets caught and gets knocked out by Anderson Silva?
Exactly. That's why the sport is so. That's why I love this sport. It's so unpredictable. Like, someone can go in and prepare to the fullest of their ability, and then a flying knee out of nowhere can just take them out. Right. So the fact that I thought they might have been booing just the overall card, right? And that's fine because the card wasn't enjoyable. Right. There was many cards this year that were far more enjoyable than that. That's true. But the fact that it became evident when they were when he went up for the interview and they were booing him and celebrating Anderson Silva, I was like, you guys have no class. Like, there's this guy, his world was shooken. Like, he taken, I think the full details have been released. I don't know them for a fact, but he took a major pay cut to fight Anderson Silva because it's not the same gate as Jon Jones. Like, he's lost out on money. He lost out on money because Jon Jones was irresponsible once again.
Yeah, that's a shame. Yeah. I like Cormier.
So do I.
Very genuine guy and a fun fighter to watch, I believe.
Oh yeah, I'm the same as you. I like defensive fighters. They don't bother me. Like Mayweather, I appreciate his greatness. I've talked about this a lot, and I appreciate his style, and I appreciate the way that Daniel Cormier fight. That's the thing is that wouldn't have been the fight if he fought Jon Jones. I believe he would have tried to do that, but Jon Jones is a lot better defensively and wouldn't have been taken to the ground as easily as Anderson Silva. But I just think that kind of the booing and the negative energy just kind of encompassed the full card. Yeah. I think people turned up, and they. Perhaps in that way, they're maybe entitled to do it because they turned up expecting to see one of the most emphatic fighters, if not the most emphatic fighter, in Jon Jones. So, were you disappointed overall to like a collective outlook on the card?
Yeah, I think most people were. Yeah. You know, it's like I said in the beginning. It was hyped up to a point where we were expecting fireworks, and it just fizzled out early.
Well, that was just the main card. Was there anything in the under, like Ken Velasquez? It was interesting in the last segment of his fight to say that was where it started to get a little bit more interesting. But was there anything that stood out to you there?
Well, that's actually a good point. Interesting to see with Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez. Will they have a rematch now?
Interesting. Yeah. That is something we'll look out for. But overall, I think we were all just let down a little bit considering how much hype was set up for this card. And I'm talking about way when it was announced. UFC 200, such a monumental number, and showcases how far the sport has come. But I think we're all now looking forward to the next UFC card that's going to be coming out. UFC 202 is obviously one that everyone's looking forward to. But don't go anywhere. We'll talk a little bit more about Aldo Edgar and what went into that fight. Make sure to check out Shane's channel at fightTIPS. Plenty of good stuff over there. And come back again to UIT Sports.